Come with me to a magical place where being labeled the pork queen is a compliment, where being nice is just a way of life, and where all leaders of the free world must pass through. Welcome to Iowa. Whether you're a current Iowan, an Iowa expat, or an Iowan at heart, this show is for you. This is the Iowa Podcast. Real Iowans, real talk, no drama. I'm Justin Brady, and it's been a little while, but I can't remember the exact date, but one of my favorite restaurants in Des Moines actually kind of went away for a while with plans to move. But then what happened? Well, Table 128 owner Lynn Pritchard is in studio to discuss that. I think there's an announcement coming up, right? So first of all, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Justin. It's great to be back. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to sit down across the table.
So last time, we've actually done this before, this radio thing, but last time we did this, I think the last time we did this, we were talking maybe about Thanksgiving recipes and how to do that during the time when I was on WHO radio with iHeart. Is that
there was a lot of wet brine, dry brine, cranberry chutney conversation going on. So the dialogue might have shifted a little bit since then, but yeah.
So when was it? Was it July 2021? I was actually I figured this would be easy.
No, you nailed the date.
Was it? Okay.
Down to the period, yes.
Okay.
I think our last service was July 24 of 21.
Mm-hmm.
It was the end of a lease term. And I was in the process of negotiating a lease, which I thought, well, this can't take that long.
Yeah.
The best laid plans, as Steinbeck would say. So the negotiations took a few months longer than I thought, which was fine, ish. And then there might have been a few changes in the world of institutional lending, and interest rates might have doubled in that window of time. It took me a long time to kind of put all the pieces back together into the puzzle. And I brought a private investor on, and other dynamics changed. And candidly, my father was ill during that period and ultimately died about a year or so ago. So I was blessed to have that time down and away from the restaurant, kind of in my peri-retirement middle-age period. But yeah, all rocket boosters are on and we are full steam ahead. We are literally weeks away from opening Table 128 again.
Weeks away, not months away, weeks away. Okay,
we are within a 7-week window at this point.
So what is the target date? Let's just get that on the table right now.
Speaking of targets, it's a little bit of a moving one, but I am aiming for, and this is a really big stretch at this point, I'm aiming to do soft opens the week of spring break.
Wow.
So that's March 11 through 15, I believe. Like I said, that is a bit of a stretch at this point, in terms of delivery schedules for equipment, installation schedules for equipment, staff training. We're supposed to have keys at the end of this month.
Woo!
And we'll be moving in. So literally this week, I believe carpet is being installed, wallpaper is being hung. I mean, that's crazy. It's transforming from a cool vanilla shell to a very warm vanilla shell very quickly.
So I know that there are people asking that don't know what Table 128 is throughout Iowa, especially throughout Des Moines. So it might be helpful to just give a really quick background on what table, and that doesn't need to be long, but like a 30-second on what Table 128 is and why you shut down to begin with, because originally the plan was to move, but the move took a little longer. So is there just a 30-second history course here?
Sure. So my ex-wife and I opened Table 128 in May of 2013. After we had a restaurant for about 2 years in that space. The genesis of Table 128 really was about the table. It was a place where we sit down, we break bread, we celebrate each other's successes and mourn each other's losses. It's where the best parts of our day are brought together. So that to me was the essence or nucleus of a restaurant. The 128 came in because it was a little bit of co-branding with the city at that point in time. 128th was our cross street in Clive. And when I did close the restaurant a few years ago, again, to your point, it was with the intent of reopening very quickly. But again, Steinbeck got in the way and plans changed and a few things got sidestepped. But Table 128, I have a son, but Table 128 was my first child.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was so much brand equity and so much of my DNA in and on that restaurant. in the decade that it was in operation that I couldn't not keep Table 128. So we're just appendixing it in its formal title, Table 128 at Gray's Landing.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. I like keeping the name. You know, there's a lot of brand equity built up there. So just my comms and branding hat going on, it makes a lot of sense. So what do we expect at the new Table 128? And there's a lot I want to go into. I'm not sure if we'll have time for all of it. There's also the cocktail lab, which is, this is recorded in the East Village. I can probably spit and hit the cocktail lab from here. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that.
I could pitch cocktail onions and hit the restaurant.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about the menu, what's different, what's the same, and the most important thing is where, you said Gray's Landing, where is this about?
Gray's Landing is a development by Sherman and Associates out of Minneapolis, which I have to say they truly understand the essence of partnership in curating a very well-selected group of tenants in the building is... Paragon IT, Estes Construction, obviously Sherman and Associates, Starbucks, Landis, and I believe it's Peterson Financial Group. So a really interesting mix of retail tenants and legacy tenants, I guess, on Southwest 9th, almost to 11th Street. So we're kind of eclipsed by City View to the south and the Link building to the west, and of course all of the new development that is just creeping further and further towards Fleur Drive. It's a really vibrant, really dynamic, really growing, high energy corridor. So I'm thrilled and very honored to be opening a restaurant there.
I mean, it's kind of downtown without being in downtown, if that makes any sense.
I call it downtown adjacent with oceans of parking.
Yeah. So, the people from that, because there's the downtown crowd of people that don't mind parallel parking and finding park. I mean, for me, it's Des Moines. Des Moines, if you're upset about parking in Des Moines, go to any other city and you will no longer be upset about parking in Des Moines. But for people who don't want to find parking, lots of parking in that area. So for people who don't understand that area, it's just like a couple larger blocks west of the Iowa Cubs, like ballpark, right?
So,
probably more than a few blocks.
So Principal Park is kind of sandwiched between the river and 2nd Avenue.
Yeah.
We are about 7 blocks straight west.
Right. Okay.
So think architectural salvage, south side of MLK.
So give us the layout. What does it look like? What's the same? What's different? What's the menu like?
Menu, there are a few very, very strong parallels, holdovers. The Brussels sprout salad, which I think that we were the genesis of Brussels sprouts in Des Moines, which I'm kind of proud of. The Lynn's burger, which I almost kind of wish weren't making a reappearance.
Really? Okay, interesting.
I can only look at certain things 10 or 15,000 times and not get a little schizophrenic. And of course the chocolate chip cookies, which I think my career as the chef owner of Table 128 might have ended if I were to say I'm not bringing the cookies back. Literally people that I don't even know who haven't been in Table 128 for 5 or 6 years. I mean, we're talking pre-pandemic, are asking and begging for the cookies. I'm like, they're still available at 503.
Yeah.
So
yes. Yeah.
There are a very small handful of menu items that are translating from part 1 to part 2 of Table 128. And then the only strong parallel will be the techniques that we employ, some of the same ingredients, but it will be hyper local, hyper seasonal, largely changing, and we're going to be workshopping our way through this as we get our feet and our water wings beneath and on our sides again. But the menu will be changing probably every Tuesday.
And that's one of the things I really liked about it, is that it was never the same. It was always different. It was always seasonal. And like you pointed out, it's stuff you try to source locally. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to understanding of how chefs like you operate, think that local is a feel-good thing. I say local because it's good branding. But in reality, can you talk about why local actually enhances flavor? Because I don't think a lot of people make that connection.
Wow. How much time do we have? Because you just brought up a very interesting word, flavor. So in my mind, and I've given lectures on this, we all have 5 senses. And taste is one of those 5 senses. But flavor is when you wrap your arms around all 5 senses and use all 5 of them. That's when flavor is created. So you're using your eyes, you're using your olfactory system. Obviously, you're using your taste buds. You're listening to food, which kind of sounds a little counterintuitive. But, and I've said this before, I think that when properly done, cuisine can be raised to the level of artistry. And I think it's the only art form where you employ all 5 senses. So back to the original portion of your question. It is a feel-good thing. It is about sustainable agriculture. It is about keeping those people who enjoy the craft of and labor of very, very hard work alive. I was raised on a farm in Western Illinois.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it wasn't a buzzword 40 years ago when I was a child. It's just the way it was. I mean, if mom wasn't at the piano or in the kitchen, she was in the garden or in the fields with my dad. So as much as it is a buzzword and a catchphrase and a Madison Avenue label now, it's really the way that I was raised. So when all of these things started popping about hyperlocal and seasonal and sustainable agriculture, yeah, those all sound great, but at the end of the day, that's just how I was raised.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of top tier chefs like yourself think that way. You know, that's just kind of how they think. And I think there's a lot of people that are like, oh, there's just nothing like a homegrown tomato. And they just don't really, that's a legit thing. There's nothing like a homegrown tomato because larger, like more production agriculture, you do lose some of the flavor. And that's why like some of the smaller, more local approaches, for lack of a better way of saying that, really do taste better.
They taste better. They feel, I mean, everything about that is accurate. So the statistics on food travel, and this is staggering to me. Yeah. By the time you are in a restaurant or making dinner at home, the food in front of you has on average traveled more than 1,300 miles.
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking onions from the Yuma Valley in Arizona. We're talking lettuce from the Salinas Valley or Monterey Valley in California. We're talking carrots from Idaho and potatoes from the Pac Northwest. I mean, it's just staggering that the cost of distribution, but yet we still have quote unquote cheap food in the U.S. So yes, it is more expensive to eat local, and it's more expensive to support local, and it's more expensive to do all of these things. But when you think about all the additional costs, both environmental and impactful, it just makes sense to be doing these things locally. Yeah. And they do taste better. I mean, commercial seed breeders, they are selecting genetics to have uniform shape, uniform color, longer shelf life. Yeah, so when you see that perfectly crimson apple in the grocery store, I don't think that our creator necessarily intended that perfect orb with the perfect garnet color to be there. I mean, that's, but that's what we think is good food. So we import these apples from 1,800 miles away to have a long shelf life. But when we're talking about local, when we're talking about flavor and using all 5 of those senses, it might not be the most perfectly shaped squash or gourd. Right. But I will guarantee you that the repleteness of flavor and the density of taste in that piece of produce is markedly different. I remember and I've only been recently learning about this stuff. We've had, it used to be Nebulum, but now it's Clayton Farms. It's like the guy up at Ames, Clayton Mooney, I think. I'm going off memory. He's a local salad, microgreens. And I've been starting to learn about this locally. But my first foray, my first journey down into Iowa grown, closer to my house stuff was when we switched from just some beef we got from a supermarket. I don't even remember where we got it from. But we started using just a local Iowa butcher that had his own cattle, and that's what we bought from. And the color was noticeably different. The flavor was noticeably different. And this, I swear, it may be in my head, but we were like, the way it cooks up is consistent all the time, and it's easy to time it. We know when to pull it, and there's no weird burning. It always was more consistent. So that was kind of our first clue, buying local, buying close
isn't a rah-rah feel-good thing. Yeah, sure, you're supporting your neighbors, you're supporting your community, but from a flavor and an ease of cooking, it does matter. I'm sure we could talk about that for 3 hours, but the food travel thing is also really interesting if you want to dig into that, which is people have to pick produce early because they don't want it to rot, and if you pick it early, the flavor doesn't develop, and then you don't taste the flavor.
Fruits and vegetables are actually artificially ripened in ethylene chambers. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, the technology that goes into the food that we consume.
Yeah.
Food that, quite honestly, in North America, perhaps we weren't intended to be dining on year-round.
Yeah, perhaps. So tell me about the space a little bit. Is it going to be bigger? Is it going to be smaller? There was some rumor that there would be a rooftop terrace. How is this all shaking out? Because sometimes you have these plans. Sometimes things change. So what's the current status?
Okay, the footprint of the restaurant is actually 65 square feet smaller. So it's a tiny little bit smaller than Table 128 Clive. It has a noticeably different feel to it, where we were very earthy, a little bit crunchy, kind of eclectic out west. Downtown has a very grown-up, I don't want to say New York because that can kind of be a little off-putting feel to a lot of Iowans. Let's just say it has a very mature jewel tone to it. So lots of golds, lots of deep blues, which has a particular professional and personal meaning to me. Emerald greens and pops of brass and coral. So it has a very jewel tone feel to it. It has a very Art Deco meets Empire feel. It's very grown up. It's sexy and a little moody, but really elegant without being pretentious.
We were talking before we started recording that the more nicer restaurants I go to, I'm seeing smaller and smaller footprints of space. I think there's a reason behind that, but that's a very tactical reason that is chosen, and it's not about saving square footage and real estate prices. It's something else entirely.
I think part of it is in response to the pandemic. We're all a little gun shy, and we all it's still fresh. I mean, that trauma the bruises are still healing from that. So I think part of it is in response to that. Part of it is my philosophy, as the wheelhouse of my career has been in maybe not necessarily fine dining, but upper end dining. I like for myself and my staff to have that control. And I feel like when I go over the 100-seat mark, I stop losing the ability to see and touch every plate, every service, every night. So I've always been a fan of keeping that number under 100, and that's just me. I mean, other chefs clearly can command restaurants that seat 500 at a clip. That's not my comfort zone. Yeah. And I believe in putting people in safe places where they can let their skills thrive and shine. Below 100 is where I work really well. So our dining room seats actually 64, and our private dining room, which is going to be so beautiful. I am so proud of it. And that's actually our Table 128. Seats an additional 8. So we actually have a little bit smaller both footprint and seat count at Table 128. However, our patio is about 4 times the size.
So there is a patio.
A very large patio, which I'm a little unnerved about because our kitchen is so condensed and small. All of a sudden, the doors open and I go from 72 seats to 120 seats.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're going to, instead of populating the entire patio with tables, I'm going to have a couple soft seating venues. So it can be
for drinks
loungier,
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Happy hours, or after dinner drinks.
Sure.
Something to just a little bit loungier, a little bit less. I have to sit proper at a table.
Yeah. So that way you're also removing a little bit of burden from the kitchen.
Yes.
And putting some of it on the bar staff as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
which makes
part
sense.
of that, again, is in response to pandemic. If we are ever in an environment where we have to be socially distanced again or physically distanced again.
Oh, gosh, I hope not.
I hope not, too.
Don't say that out loud.
But it's
that
something that
out.
I have lectured on at the CIA. It's things that I've brought up with the powers that be at DMAC and at Indian Hills. awareness of, how do I best describe it? Pivot positioning.
Yeah.
Which we all had pivot despair coming out of the pandemic. Pivot fatigue. I think we need to start teaching, like, what do we do if?
Oh, sure.
And I'm not saying that we have to have a FEMA plan for everything, but as a small business operator, I don't want to, but I need to be thinking about those what if scenarios.
Yeah. So I want to ask about that because the pandemic, the way you adapted during the pandemic was incredible. But really, just to touch on that, I was telling you before we were recording about potatoes and just like, in my head, there was this TV show that we watched. I don't know if it's even on anymore, but it's called Chef, the Chef Show, and it's Jon Favreau hanging out with Roy Choi. Roy Choi is the guy. He has a Vegas restaurant, and Jon Favreau learned cooking from him, so that when he did the movie Chef, he didn't look like a complete moron. And so they did a little show together. And there's just this one statement that he says to Roy, and he's like, how much of being a professional chef is this? And they're just like doing crazy amounts of prep all the time. He's like, dude, this is this is what we do all day long. Yeah. And so I was telling you, I'm just like, I learned this potato hack, which involves, it's too much to get into, but which involves me rotating every single potato every 15 minutes on a giant roasting pan. And what you're telling me is to give that much detail to each dish. That's why these chefs are trying to control their how many seats they have, because once it scales past a certain point, you do start to lose flavor if you can't be that hands-on with every dish.
You do. To dig a little bit deeper into the well here, you can still execute at that level, but the scales of economy in terms of labor begin to shift dramatically.
Makes sense, yeah. You need to almost have a second like executive chef at that point.
Well, you just start developing a much broader brigade in the kitchen, and you're looking at an organizational structure that very closely mirrors what, the modern patriarch of our industry, Auguste Escoffier, described as, the kitchen brigade, where you had one person in control, and then you have about 5 chefs beneath them, and then you start having chefs de partie and multiple chefs on each station. All in, I mean, a traditional brigade is about 40 chefs in the kitchen. The labor alone, you're upside down by millions of dollars a year in a situation like that, unless you are one of the chosen ones. And I won't go into names, but you have staffs of people working on internships or month-long stages for free.
Wow. So let's talk about the pandemic. We've never talked about this, and I've always wanted to ask you about this, but as you indicated, the pandemic happens, and I think a lot of people are already starting to forget the impact that had on businesses, but especially restaurants, because one day, I don't even know how much heads up you got, but one day the state's like, you are now closed. Right. You are not allowed, basically the way you pay your bills is no longer legally allowed. And so you pivoted. Can you tell us how you pivoted? Because it was actually pretty brilliant.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, first and foremost. Like I said, some of those bruises are still, they're very memorable. Yeah. And the hematoma is still a little fresh. But, very candidly, and, credit where credit is due, a lot of the brilliance about how we changed so rapidly belongs to my ex-wife. We sat down in our dining room at home, and this was, I think, we closed, I want to say, maybe 2 days before what would have been historically one of the largest food and beverage days of the year, St. Pat's.
Oh, gosh.
And
that's right, that timing. Oh, I forgot about that.
So we sat down in our dining room, and because we're both numbers people, we knew exactly where we had to be to cover our fixed costs. And then we identified a handful of macro goals to keep as many people employed as possible, to keep as many people fed as possible, and to have something to come back to when this thing, which we thought it was going to be 5 weeks, was over.
Remember when it was 2 weeks to slow the spread? Remember that?
Yeah.
It turned into 2 years.
So we developed this program called the supper subscription, where you would buy a package of 5 dinners for a family of 4. And we knew the number that we had to have to hit our fixed cost goals, keep those people employed, and keep as many people fed and have something to come back to at the end. And then, of course, the rules started to shift, and we were asked 5 new questions every day that we didn't know the answers to. So we were, like everybody else, making it up as we went.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we started breaking a lot of rules just to keep ahead of the curve.
Yep. Because
that was another hyperbolized expression. Where is the curve? Are we flattening the curve? Are we bending the curve? All these things. So, and then a few restrictions were lessened, and we were able to have a handful of people in the dining room. And 50% capacity, 6 feet minimum distancing.
Yep.
Everybody still had to have PPE on.
Yeah. Wear your mask to your table, but then as soon as you sit, then you can take it off.
Yeah, some of these things are so laughable now, but we were all scared crapless in the middle of this stuff.
We didn't know, A, we didn't know, and B, what are you going to do when the state or when lawmakers say you have to do this thing? I remember someone showing a graphic on social media, I think it was Twitter, and it just shows a picture of COVID only exists at about 6 feet. So that's why when you sit, you can take off your mask.
I was literally, last night I was flipping through all the photos on my phone, and I'm like, wow, that one's triggering. Wow, that one's triggering.
Oh,
it was pictures of the dining room, and we had the plexiglass shields around every table.
Oh, yeah. The plexiglass shields, right.
As time went on,
I forgot about that.
And some of those things lessened, we were able to return to somewhat normal and have guests in the building. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, as a profession, those of us who are in it, whose love language is to be in service to other people, it hurt to have that part of our giving nature ripped away from us.
Oh.
And to be able to have guests back into the dining room again, it was kind of a revelation. And then as those restrictions lessened, as the months went on after our 5 weeks, it was moving to be able to embrace our guests again.
Yeah.
And then one of the happiest days of my professional career was when I threw those plexiglass shields into the dumpster.
I bet. Did you break them up before you threw them in there? Just
I might have had a little bit of fun.
Slow motion, Office Space style with the baseball bat. Mm-hmm. Oh my word! You got through it.
We did.
Obviously, as you indicated earlier, excruciating, because not only did you have to go through a global pandemic that no one has ever seen before and that no leader knew how to deal with, but then you mentioned your father passing away, and I know that it's been excruciating for you getting to this point, but of course people in your community like myself are thrilled over the freaking moon that
That's
Table
very
128 is making a huge comeback. I know there's also there are probably 80 other things I want to go into, but you can't get into everything on a 30-minute show. There's also, I don't want to neglect the 503 Cocktail Lab and Tasting Room. I always call it 503 Tasting Room or 503 Cocktail Lab. I always forget one of those things, but that's still going too, right?
We're having a great time.
Are there any other 50 billion projects that you want to talk about? What else is there that I'm missing?
Again, I have been so blessed during this time. Number one, I've been able to spend a lot of time with my son. He's 4.5 and brilliant and hilarious and kind and loving.
4.5, that's crazy. I remember when you were celebrating the birth of your son at the rest. That's feels like that was last year. That's
it kind of does. I think everybody hits that stage in their life where they're like, where is the time going? I mean, I think we experience that at a very much accelerated rate when you have kids, when you hit certain thresholds in your career and your personal life. And I'm right there. How did 4.5 years happen?
Yeah.
How I felt like yesterday, Sarah and I were picking strawberries in a strawberry patch north of Grimes. And all of a sudden she was 13 months pregnant with him at that point. And now he's going into kindergarten this fall.
Yeah. Crazy.
But I've been able to spend a lot of extra time with him, which of course is the greatest thing in the universe. I was able to be literally by my dad's side for the last handful of months of his life. Recently, I just actually tragically lost a brother-in-law, but I was, again,
gosh.
fortunate enough to be at his side with my sister and their entire family in Idaho. I have kept very busy with some consulting projects for some regional things that I can't dig too deep into. But yeah, I started 503 Cocktail Lab.
Wow. I'm going to ask about that next time, I guess.
And we had just had so much fun down there. I mean, the curation of some really delicious cocktails. Our menu is fun and it's fresh and it's playful and it's whimsical. It changes frequently. Again, I think that that's part of my professional brand as well. But the chef de cuisine down there is doing these amazing ramen dishes and roasted cauliflower steaks. I mean, it's just, we're very tight on space, so we have to have a very tight menu.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's fun. And we've been blessed to kind of find a real sweet spot, ironically, with second weddings because we're a small venue.
Really?
We kind of max out at like 45, 50 guests.
Yeah,
and we have done, I think we just wrapped up our 6th wedding in the space last weekend. We have a ball with those. And
I will say, like, obviously I've been there several times, and I will say that most times when you have craft cocktails, it's the same thing that you get everywhere with a different name. And so there are things you pull off with cocktails there that I'm like, how did you pull this off? I've never tasted this in a cocktail before. So it really is an art form over there, and I obviously really appreciate that. Lynn Pritchard, Table 128, of course, opening hopefully in March is what it sounds like. I'm thrilled it's coming back. What's the website? Can people make reservations now? How do they reach out to you?
I have not flipped the switch on reservations yet. And very vocally, I will be judiciously tight on reservations for a while because I don't want to turn the apple cart upside down. I will be very controlled with the number of tables per 15-minute seating period for a while until we get our sea wings underneath us and we understand the internal choreography of a new space with a new staff. But we're very close.
Awesome.
We're doing our onboarding with our reservation software next Monday with the general manager and the chef and myself. So we're close.
Website before we go.
Table128bistro.com.
Awesome. Lynn Pritchard, Table 128 Executive Chef and Owner. Thank you so much for coming on the Iowa Podcast.
Thank you.
And to my fellow Iowans, Iowa expats, and Iowans at heart, thanks for listening and subscribing to the Iowa Podcast.